I need you to drill this into my foot.
Pretend, you mean?
Pretend? No.
Wait, what?
Workout was cut a little short today because we slept in, but we did get our pull-ups in. But check out the workout we got over the weekend. Look at all this firewood. We got all this indoor wood here, got more stacked here. Then over here, we have all sorts of outdoor wood all chopped up for the fire pits. This is what I used to chop all of it. I have to have the machine returned by 9 a.m. Oh, look at all that beautiful wood.
Now I'm gonna put this bunny food out on the deck.
Saturday night, we celebrated Seven's birthday party. We invited a bunch of friends and family over to our house. And like 20 minutes before everyone gets here, I'm out in this garden and I'm kind of tidying up a little bit. That brick right there, that corner son of a bitch, fell onto my toe. And it really kind of messed me up. So I had to like ice and elevate my foot. So then yesterday, we have to chop all this wood, but I can't even like move my foot because it's so swollen. And then this happened. I need you to drill this into my foot.
Pretend, you mean?
Pretend? No.
Wait, what? No, I can't do that. No. Ugh, no, you should have asked your mom.
You're a nurse.
No. It's not going in.
Okay, well you gotta twist more. Ow!
Twist
Not
more.
push, twist.
What do you mean twist more?
Twist.
Okay.
That's what's gonna, there you go. That's what's gonna drill it.
Okay, I see the nails.
Not push it.
Okay. Calm down.
Oh. Okay. Ah! Oh, it's stuck in there. Get out.
Okay, I will.
Ouch. Ah. Ah.
Oh my gosh. Oh, you're right, but that's so
That was
gross.
fun, huh?
And there was a certain satisfaction when the pool of blood came up.
Yeah, there was, wasn't there? Yeah, you're a nurse. That nursing degree paid off. So this is what it looks like right now. Yesterday, I finished this notebook. It got a little hectic towards the end. I had to like cram it all in because I didn't want to like transition in the middle of a chapter. This notebook has like 20 chapters of Isaiah and 25 chapters of Jeremiah in it. Now it's time to start another one. I'm kind of nervous. Okay, we go from an inspiring Bible writing morning vlog to a shareholders meeting to now we're going to try and explain to you why porn is so awesome and you should look at it. That's a joke. So it's been a while since we've posted on this topic, but this is something that's been on our mind a lot lately. And we posted, I think, a second video explaining our stance or our thoughts right now about, is porn always wrong? Just asking that question. And I've been engaged in an email dialogue with a friend of mine about these vlogs. And finally, I decided I can't type all this out and I'd rather speak it. And then I think it would be helpful for other people to hear. So Matt, thank you for the email. I hope this answers your questions and I hope it addresses some things other people were probably wondering as well. So this is Matt's email, and I'm just taking like some sections. It certainly seems that many prevailing perspectives from the church about topics related to sex have been fear-based and shame-producing. And perhaps my own thinking on this topic in particular is too simplistic, but here's how I'm currently thinking about it. And then he quotes Matthew 28. But I say to you that anyone who looks at a woman with lustful intent has already committed adultery with her in his heart. So that's something Jesus said. The good question that follows is, what is lustful intent? If watching porn incited only an appreciation for and enjoyment of beauty, etc., I would venture to say that that wouldn't be inherently sinful. If it incited in the viewer-observer an imaginative fantasy of having sex with the person depicted, however, perhaps that is the adultery in the heart Jesus is claiming. And it's like a question mark, but I think that's his main statement is okay, Jesus like warned against adultery in the heart.
I think it's really important to define lustfulness, because I grew up thinking that lustful meant I find this person attractive. Oh dear God, what do I do? You know, I mean, I like was afraid.
Especially if you're married.
Especially if you're married, or if the person's married and you're not married. I mean, there's just so much fear around this. So it's really been only in the last 6 months that we've explored, what does lustful actually mean?
And what doesn't it mean?
And what doesn't it mean?
And how do you actually engage in fantasy? I think your question's really good, because I think there is room for imaginative fantasy in the Christian life. Let's put sex on the table for a second and let's talk about video games or movies or Lord of the Rings or whatever. Or let's do another one, more controversial. What's my favorite movie?
Wall Street.
Yeah, Wolf of Wall Street. Okay. So here's a movie that Martin Scorsese made, and it really allows you to imagine what it's like. You can fantasize to be in this person's shoes that goes from broke to like hundreds of millions of dollars as a crook. And I think that's a valuable process, because at the end of it, it's a true story, there's truth in it, and I walk away thinking, wow, I don't think that's very appealing lifestyle. Like, the pros do not outweigh the cons, but that takes fantasy to get that. Okay, so that's like a weird example. But let's even talk about lust-based fantasies, or maybe not lust, but sex-based fantasies. So it wasn't until recently that Cami and I got into therapy, and we felt like any fantasy we had was like bad. Like, okay.
Especially sexual fantasies.
Yeah. And I worked really, really hard at trying to get rid of them. And this is what's actually really interesting to me is, we can talk about what's right or wrong. We can also talk about what's effective. And I've spent a lot of energy and time, and spent a lot of energy and time with other people working on this lust thing for years. And one of the things that really got discouraging to me is I didn't actually see these methods work very well, of just trying to not just call it bad and walk away.
They worked well with behavior modification.
For short periods of time.
For short periods of time. But not beyond, like, yeah, I don't know.
But it kind of comes down to this question of, is a fantasy bad? Or is a desire bad? So let's say I see a woman across the street, and she's not my wife, and she has a body that I find attractive. Now, growing up, I would have thought, okay, don't think about that, don't look, like, walk away. But that actually gives the person, the role, the possibility, I think, more power than an alternative, which is to say, it's actually like fantasize, but don't just stop at the fun part. Fantasize all the way is another way of putting it. Let truth invade the fantasy. So I would say, man, that person's attractive. Okay. Now, if I want to take it a step further, I can say, I'd like to sleep with her. That's a truth. Like, that would be awesome sex with just chemistry and fun. I can imagine it. And then I think the whole way, okay, it would last about 10 seconds, maybe 10 minutes, maybe 10 hours if we're really lucky. And then it would ruin my family, my life, my relationship with Cammie, my goals, and like my integrity.
Not to mention hers, possibly.
And it would probably do damage to her. Okay, like that's not worth it. But that's like, I think that's okay to give ourselves permission to go down that path. And I think actually more effective, at least for me, to say, oh, okay, I looked at her, she's attractive, but let's just leave it at that. Like, I don't need to go down that fantasy anymore.
Every time, yeah.
Because it's just a fantasy. And video games are great, I think, as long as you know they're just video games. Like, I'm shooting people on the video game, but I'm not doing it in real life. And it's not wrong to do it on the video game. And in a way, if I go up to the lady and I'm like, hey, hot stuff, like, what are you doing? I think that starts to become more than just fantasy and more than ideas, and it starts to actually become relational and disruptive. But I think that this verse you're quoting of the Sermon on the Mount with Jesus, I don't think the point of it is being less lustful. I don't think his point was saying anyone that's looked at a woman has committed adultery, so don't look at a woman. I think he's saying, however bad or good you think you are, take the worst person, the worst prostitute, the worst rapist, the worst whoever, and if you've ever even had a thought, you're just as bad as them. Which is a really weird and twisted application that I think we've pulled out of it, which is to say, be better. Like, don't be lustful.
Yeah.
Which I think is also a good thing, perhaps, but I don't think that's the point of what Jesus was saying. I know that these vlogs can run the risk of causing damage or not being helpful, but you guys, we are not saying porn is awesome. We're not saying you should go look at it. In fact, there's this thing, we have our conscience that I think is like really, really important. So if your conscience is telling you not to watch Wolf of Wall Street or look at certain pictures, like, I think you should listen to that. Don't hear us saying, go for it. But there's a difference when we take our conscience and we say, I don't want to eat meat, which I think is fine. You're allowed to say that. But then when we say, no one should eat meat, that's a wrong thing.
This verse says, don't eat meat.
Yeah.
Or like saying...
I think that's actually way too far, and I don't think it works well in the long run. Let's be honest about the pros and cons about fantasy, and I think there's some cons. I think there are some pros. I really do. Even if it causes you to move on and have it lose power. The second part of Matt's email says, so he's kind of basing this off the Matthew 5:28, but it says, if that is true, and we know that adultery is a sin, even if it is committed only in the heart, I think that avoiding porn altogether might be the better answer, given Jesus' stern warning about sin. And then he uses this verse from Matthew 18. If your hand or your foot causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. It is better for you to enter life crippled or lame with 2 hands or feet than to be thrown into the eternal fire. In this case, perhaps it would be the eye or the imagination that could cause us to sin if they're inciting lust that leads to adultery in the heart.
So when he says, I think you should just avoid porn altogether, that might be safer, basically. I just wonder, like, who gets to draw those lines? The Bible doesn't draw those lines. And so I think we have to be really careful when we do draw those lines, even with ourselves, but definitely with other people. It's not clear. It
might feel safer to draw more conservative lines and to say, and actually porn is so tricky because you could look at two people having sex and be like, okay, well maybe that's wrong. Okay, but what if they're married? Well, okay, maybe not. Maybe that's still wrong. But what if they're just naked? Is that right or wrong? Okay, well that makes certain pieces of art right or wrong. What if they're just topless? Okay, what if their knees are showing? What if their thighs are showing? Yeah. And this is really, like Cami said, I think this is a spirit or an attitude about right and wrong that is so much bigger than porn or justifying Playboy or Penthouse. The question I ask is, why doesn't the Bible mention this, or why didn't Jesus list these specifics? You know, and I think as principles, these are really good. I think adultery is very bad. I think lust is very destructive and bad. But when we safely draw a line over here, I think it does this thing. First of all, it puts us in this kind of safe place, because we usually draw lines around the places where we see ourselves on the inside.
I would say legalism is just as bad as lust and adultery. I mean, I don't really think people talk about that.
I think that's the bigger thing. Then it also distracts us from this other thing, which is not less important. It's actually more important. And this is why I'm so fascinated by the way Jesus approached people. And let's just take the prostitute at the well, or the woman with however many wives. You know, husbands. Why didn't he bring that up? Like, he could have.
Yeah.
You know, and he could have told her, like, he could have made that the linchpin of his statement. Jesus didn't spend time drawing these types of lines, I don't think, very much. Maybe there's some exceptions, but it's not a victimless crime when we just declare something as a sin or wrong that's actually not, because it causes us to look down on other people that are doing that, and it causes us to even look down on ourselves in ways that is, I think, kind of self-glorifying.
I think it like enslaves people. They're not as free as they could be in their sex life with their spouse. I mean, there's just so much.
What if there's women that can't have orgasms? What if the only way a woman could have an orgasm was through looking at porn? And let's say, just to make it a more elaborate story, let's say this woman grew up and she didn't have a dad, or she didn't have parents, and she was sexually molested and raped, and she, had, 5 or 6 husbands and marriages and 10 boyfriends and blah, blah. And then at the age of 45, she found Jesus and started following Christian church type ways, okay? But she has like 45 years of baggage here. And she has so much pain and trauma that the only way she can have an orgasm is by looking at a picture of a nude woman or guy. Now, my way of processing that before would have been just to say, well, that's wrong. Porn's wrong. So don't do it. Like, it's as simple as that. But really, for this person that has so much pain and trauma, what I've learned is, like, who am I to say, put my perspective of what porn is upon you and deliver some sentence upon you? Like, is God happier if this person doesn't have an orgasm that he invented, by the way, and created and made them to have for the next 45 years of their life, because I'm saying that looking at a nude man or woman is wrong? I don't know, you guys. I don't know the answer to that, but I'm not as confident as I used to be. And we've learned, even with our own fantasies, that to not feel as guilty about what they are, because they're indicators of something that's deep down inside of us. I don't know, one other example I feel like we've talked about in this vlog, because that last one was kind of a stretch, is just like mental illness, or what we classify as mental illness. What we've learned is that a lot of times people use fantasy or multiple personality disorders or schizophrenia to deal with reality in a way they wouldn't otherwise be able to. So instead of killing themselves, God actually designed these workarounds that I'm not gonna say are super good or healthy things, but they're not outside of his design either, so that instead of killing yourself because you can't deal with reality, you can actually
become someone else.
Yeah, your brain develops other pathways to stay alive. In the past, I think I just I looked down upon people that had those types of illnesses.
It was so simplistic, like, just to be able to say, like, well, that's not good or wholesome or right.
If you had Jesus, you wouldn't need that stuff. You know, you wouldn't need fantasy. All you need is Jesus.
Or if you do have Jesus, why aren't you asking him to cure you?
This whole like hand and foot causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. I think that's an important passage, but I would be really careful about how selective we are when we only apply that passage to certain lifestyles. I just think culturally, sex is like the one that we're focusing on now. Like we seem to have let off on the dancing one and the music one.
The alcohol.
The alcohol, you know, all those things were said about those things though not too long ago.
And people would probably argue, Christians especially, like, well, sex is more important than dancing or alcohol or...
And I actually agree with that. I just think when truth is on your side and you're following the way that God actually designed, that's enough. Most of our life should be about that and not trying to avoid sin. And manufacturing sin definitions, which I've done a lot of in my lifetime, seemed productive at the time, but it wasn't helpful for my long-term spirituality, because the best you're ever going to get with rules is more behavior modification, possibly like a holier life. But I actually think it makes you more of an ass, and it actually creates distance between you and God, because it turns you into the older brother in the prodigal son story who actually thinks that he has his life figured out. We're really not endorsing porn or dancing. I actually think if we're gonna use porn or not use porn, the more mature our reasons can get, the better. So I started off with this thing about conscience. You know, I don't think we should violate our conscience, but I do think we can change our conscience. This vlog is for adults, and I want to talk to people who are, you know, if your conscience has said this same simple line for the last 30 years, don't look at it, it's bad, don't look at it, it's bad, don't look at it, it's bad, don't look at it, it's bad. Like, maybe it's time to mature. You know, in 5th grade, I swore I would never drink alcohol. Well, I didn't really swear, but I didn't believe in swearing then. But I promised myself I would never drink alcohol because I thought it was bad. And I didn't want to become an alcoholic, and we had alcoholism in the family. And I was just like, I'm not gonna do it, it's bad. That worked good for me as a 5th grader. Like, that was how I understood the world. And I wasn't like really into drinking anyways, but it like helped me make sense of things. But now I can see like, oh, there's this thing. It has some pros, it has some cons. I don't think it's prohibited in the Bible. I don't think Jesus had a huge opinion on it. A lot of other people have a lot of opinions on it. Matt, thank you for sending this email. I hope you don't see this vlog as a cop-out way of not responding to your email. But I'm actually really terrible at emails anyways. Take it as an honor. You got a whole vlog. And I'm really happy to engage in this more in the comments if this can be productive. We just started getting feedback from our survey, from our 500th episode. And there's one lady in particular that wrote about, it's a different person than last time, who wrote about feeling shame around porn. I love it that people feel safe to share that with us, and my heart goes out to these people because I've battled with porn a long time, but you know what was worse than porn? Was shame.
Yep.
And you can beat porn, but if you're always worried that in the back of your mind, if you look at it, you're gonna be on the out, or you're gonna be kicked out, or God's gonna be pissed at you.
Yeah.
I don't think that's what the Christian life is actually about. I think we're missing the point if we think that this is like a holiness, that's what this religion is about, is just attaining that for ourselves.
Or God's constantly looking down at us, like, as in like, how dare you? Like,
yeah, or we're always just like one step away from slipping up, and like, I don't know, I just want to like shout at people and say like, it's okay, like, he didn't make a big deal of it with like hookers and prostitutes, like, but yet it was a super big deal, but it, you know, it was in its place, it was, I don't know how to say it.
Well, he honored prostitutes. So
if
bizarre.
I was a prostitute, I wouldn't be able to honor myself.
Yeah.
You know, Jesus would be more okay with me than I would be with myself.
Yeah.
And I think that about looking at porn,
yeah,
or whatever your thing is. Man, it's like this is like Halloween. It's like making
I
our
can't
faces
even hardly
go.
see the camera now.